With so many people getting into chickens for the first time this year, I figured now would be a great time to make a video over a topic that is always heavily questioned and often debated. And that is if your chicks need medicated or non-medicated feed. In this video, I'm showing you the small bags of these just because they are easier to carry. But in the long run, it pays to get the larger bag of chick feed if you have the space for it because you're gonna go through it. Chicks need to be on a starter feed for 16 to 22 weeks. So it's definitely gonna pay in the long run to get the bigger bag. But for the sake of the video, I have these. There's many different brands out there. There's Purina, there's some local brands, there's Nutrina. Nutrina is my personal favorite. And most brands will have an option for a medicated crumble or a non-medicated crumble. So as you can see, they're both gonna be an 18% protein, same amount of fat, and same amount of fiber. And they both come in a tiny crumble that is easy for chicks to swallow. Now you're gonna hear a lot of people say, should I get medicated or should I get non-medicated? Now in some ways that's kind of a personal preference. Do your research on the pros and cons of both and then make your own decision. I'm not here to tell you to do it one way or another. I'm just here to educate you on the differences and share some of my experience that I've had with it so that you can make your own educated decision. So we'll start with the medicated feed. The medicated chick feed has amprolium in it, and amprolium is not an antibiotic. A lot of people assume that the medicated feed is an antibiotic, and it's not. In most, if not in all states, you have to have a vet's prescription to get an antibiotic feed. So you might be thinking, what is amprolium? What's the point of that? What's the benefit? Well, amprolium is the active ingredient in Corid. Corid is used to treat coccidiosis, which is a highly contagious and very, very painful parasitic disease in the gut, which, if left untreated, will spread and is very often fatal. Now, most people that get baby chicks are getting them from hatcheries, and in the hatchery, there's a lot of chicks. In some cases, there's hundreds of thousands of birds in there, which means that chances are, at some point, one of them is going to be sick. When you're dealing with numbers that big, it doesn't matter how clean you are. Sometimes germs still get through, and there's still going to be human error, and sometimes things aren't sanitized properly. So things can spread, and your chicks can get sick. So that's why it is often recommended to start your chicks off on a medicated chick feed. That way, if they're coming fresh from the hatchery, they're going to have that layer of protection. Now, if your chick or adult hen is already showing symptoms of coccidiosis, the medicated feed alone is not going to cure it. The feed only has enough medication in it to serve as a preventative, not as a treatment. So if your chicken or your chick already has it, you must treat them with Corid. This is used for treatment. The feed is as a preventative. If you have to treat it, make sure you use this product according to the directions on the label, and if you have any questions at all, contact your local vet. If you treat a bird with Corid, you're going to want to make sure that they have access to a vitamin supplement during treatment and at least for a week after treatment as well. The reason for this is because the medication can sometimes interfere with their vitamin intake and how their bodies absorb it, so you want to make sure they don't have any deficiencies. Here is Save a Chick Electrolytes, which has added vitamins in it. You mix 1 packet of this to a gallon of water. However, when it comes to using the medication for a treatment dose, if you have sick birds, you're probably going to want to use a stronger vitamin supplement such as Nutri-Drench or Poultry Cell, which you can get online or at the local feed stores. Now, if you just have baby chicks that are on medicated feed as a preventative for the first couple weeks of their life, you can add this to a gallon of water for them, but make sure you also supply a fresh plain water source for them as well. Now, I know it can sometimes sound scary knowing that a bird whose eggs you're going to consume has medication in its system. Well, keep in mind that these are young chicks in the scenario in this video. So the medicated feed they're eating now won't still be in their system by the time they start laying eggs. And with that being said, there's technically no withdrawal period recommended for this medication. So even if you had an adult hen who was sick with coccidiosis and you had to treat her, there is no recommended withdrawal period, which means that this medication is so benign that it should not transfer into your system through the eggs, and that the eggs would still be safe to eat. However, if you're not comfortable doing that, you could discard the eggs for a couple of weeks until you feel safe consuming them again. And keep in mind, you don't want your animals to suffer, you don't want it to spread. So if your hen or your chick does have coccidiosis, please make sure it gets proper treatment. Some people keep their chicks on medicated feed for the entire length of raising them until they start to mature and then move on to layer feed, which is not going to be medicated. And there have been countless success stories of doing it this way. There have been other people who have only used non-medicated feed and they've had great success as well. I'll be honest, my first several batches of chicks, I used a medicated feed. And then the one time I chose not to, I ended up getting chicks that had coccidiosis, and it spread to the broody hen that was raising them at the time. But luckily I caught it very early. I noticed it before they even acted sick. I treated them all and they did great, they did fine. So just know that there's no guarantee that they're gonna get coccidiosis, so you don't necessarily have to give them medicated feed, but there's also gonna be that risk, that chance that they may have it. So weigh those options and decide if you'd rather take that chance or not. Just keep in mind, if you're not using a medicated feed, to keep a close eye out for symptoms. Birds are prey animals, which means they're gonna hide their illnesses as well as they can, because if they appear sick or weak, predators are gonna pick them off. So their natural instinct tells them to hide their illness. So keep a close eye out for symptoms if you don't use any medicated feed. But like I said, a lot of people have had great success with starting their chicks off on a medicated feed for the first few weeks of life when the chicks are younger and still fragile and still fresh from being around all the other birds at the hatchery. And then they switch them to a non-medicated feed once the birds are hardier and a little bit older. You want to make sure that you keep your brooding area where you're raising the chicks very clean. Make sure you stay on top of cleaning up their feces, especially if they accidentally poop in their feeder or water. And that can also help cut back on the chances of spreading coccidiosis if you're using a non-medicated feed. But there actually is one instance where it's recommended to never start them on medicated feed, and that's if you have a silkie. This is a silkie. It's a bantam breed. And silkies as a breed have been known to be prone to vitamin deficiencies. So like we talked about earlier in the video, since the medication Amprolium can interfere with their intake of vitamins, it's advised not to put silkie chicks on a medicated feed just in case, since they're already prone to vitamin issues. However, with that being said, there have been many silkie breeders and owners that have told me that they raise their chicks on a medicated feed with no issue at all. And then there are others that will get really, really aggressive about it and swear up and down that they must stay away from the medication. I'll be honest, when I got my first silkies ever, which was my first year of having chickens, I didn't know about this, and the breeder that I got my first two from told me that she was using a medicated feed, so that's what I used because that's what the breeder recommended, that's what they were raised on. And honestly, mine did fine, knock on wood, but to this day, they're 5 years old now. I've never ever had any vitamin-related issues with any of my silkies. But as I've learned more and I found out about this, I am now going to err on the side of caution and not raise silkie chicks on a medicated feed. I do always keep vitamin supplements on hand though, just in case. And like I said just a little bit ago, if you're not going to use a medicated feed, keep an eye out for symptoms because they, just like any other breed, silkies can get coccidiosis. And if they do, they're going to need treatment. But with those vitamin supplements and keeping a close eye on them, they should be fine. If you run into complications, consult your vet. But just please don't avoid treating them because if you don't treat them for coccidiosis, it will spread and it will likely kill them. I don't know how much truth is behind this, but I've seen a lot of people talking about how like the really fancy show quality silkies tend to be more fragile and tend to experience more vitamin deficiencies, and kind of like your cheaper, just rugged backyard pet quality silkies tend to be a little bit sturdier. I don't have fancy show silkies. I just have your cheaper backyard pet silkies, and I've never had any issues with any of them having any vitamin deficiencies or being on the fragile side. I don't know if I've just been lucky or if there's any truth behind what I've seen some people suggesting about that. But it kind of makes sense because if you think about it, some of the really fancy show animals that are bred just for their looks and they're not necessarily bred for their hardiness or their health are prone to a lot of issues. So if there's breeders that only focus on the looks of the bird and not the hardiness, that could make sense why some of them are experiencing more issues. But again, I don't know how much truth is behind that. That's just what I've seen other people talking about, and it kind of makes sense to me. Some people will argue that if you have vaccinated chicks, you don't need to feed medicated feed. And that's only true in some cases. If your chick is specifically vaccinated against coccidiosis, then yeah, you probably don't need to feed that. However, the most common vaccine for chicks is the vaccine against Marek's disease. Marek's disease and coccidiosis are two entirely different things. So therefore, even if your chick is vaccinated against Marek's disease, it can still easily catch and die from coccidiosis. Like I said, they are very different things. So it depends on what your chick is vaccinated against. Vaccinated against coccidiosis? Yeah, you should be safe. Otherwise, it doesn't matter, it can still catch it. I notice there's often confusion with that, so I just wanted to mention that and clear that up, and hopefully it helps some of you. Some hatcheries don't even offer a coccidiosis vaccine, so those are just some things to keep in mind. So that about wraps it up. There's more than one way to do things right. So do your research, weigh the pros and cons of the options, and do what you feel is right. And at the end of the day, just keep a close eye on your birds and love your birds and take the best care of them possible. There's a lot of new people getting into this hobby, and some of the people I've seen aren't being so friendly on Facebook groups to the newcomers. And I just wanted to say to the bullies out there that are making people feel stupid for asking questions, or for someone who doesn't do something the exact same way as you, just remember that you were a beginner once too. When you started out, you didn't know what you were doing either. That's how you learn. Asking questions is how they're going to learn how to take care of their birds properly, so don't make them feel stupid or afraid to ask questions. Be kind and encourage people to get into this hobby properly by being kind and sharing your advice with them and your wisdom. I have a lot of videos on my channel that tell you how to take care of chicks and adult hens in various different scenarios, so make sure you subscribe to my channel and check out those videos if you want to learn more. And there's a lot of people panic buying already, and I've seen a lot of hatcheries posting that they cannot keep up with the demand. They are having an enormous amount of phone calls, emails, requests, and they're human. They can't physically keep up. So please remember this chick season to be kind to the local hatcheries, be kind to the feed store workers that are selling chicks, be kind to the breeders that are selling to you. Don't ridicule their prices. Don't try to guilt trip people into bending the rules. Don't scream at the poor kids at the feed store working behind the counter or make them feel guilty because they sold out before you got there. You're not the only person in the world. There's a lot of people demanding chicks right now, so please just be kind and patient and reasonable. And remember that these are living creatures. Baby chicks are fragile. They've been through a lot getting shipped to the feed stores, so please don't make any unreasonable requests and try to manipulate situations to get your way. Rules at these places are set in place for a reason, and it's often to keep the business flowing efficiently and properly and safely, but also to ensure the welfare and the safety of the chicks. There was once one person who was requesting a certain feed store to have one of their delivery drivers go to all their multiple different stores because she wanted a bunch of different breeds and just one place wasn't getting all the ones she wanted. She wanted multiple different breeds from various locations, and she wanted one of their delivery drivers to drive around basically all day long because these stores were not all close together, and round up all the different chicks she wanted and bring them to her nearest location of that place for her to buy. And that's just outrageous because baby chicks can't handle that. They can't handle being away from their heat lamp or their heat plate all day long and being without feed and water for that many hours. Not to mention the stress of that. So just please keep the welfare of these animals in mind. Don't panic, don't freak out. If the feed store sells out before you get there, just keep in mind there's other ways to get chickens, to get chicks. You can even get hatching eggs. There's local breeders. There's other breeds out there. Just because the one breed sells out that you really wanted doesn't mean there's not going to be other good options available. You can order from hatcheries, or you might just have to settle and order next season and know to place your orders ahead of time. I'm not going to dwell too far into this because I just recently made a video similar to all of these points. But I just wanted to end it with putting that out there since there's a lot of new chicken owners. Just remember to stay calm, be nice to the workers, and put the health of the chicks first. I've been seeing a lot of panic with people on the internet and even around my own town. So please remember, chick season is supposed to be a fun time, not a stressful time. So do your research, be patient, and enjoy your birds. If you don't get the breed you want this spring, I guarantee you once things calm down a little bit in a few months, you might be able to place another order in the summer or fall. So don't be too disappointed and don't give up. Just because the answer is no one day doesn't mean the answer is going to be no the next day.